Leanna Patch is back, and I love talking to Leanna. She's one of the most creative, funniest people in e-commerce. She's on the show to get really tactical this time. She's the founder of Punchline Copy, and what she does is help brands be funny. This time on the show, all we did is talk like tactical tips for how to actually do this stuff in your brand. So today on the show, expect to learn how to use humor to help people get through the anxiety of making a purchase and actually finish their purchase. How to use humor to make it so that people don't skip transactional emails, which are the most read emails that you send, and what my favorite donut is as presented by my 4-year-old who interrupts me in the show. Hang in there, stay tuned. It's going to be a really good episode. You're going to like this a lot. Let's talk to Leanna. Hi, Leanna. How are you?
Hi, Andrew. I'm great. How are you?
You are lying. You said that earlier.
I am lying. How dare you? I mean,
it's probably good.
Great? Like we're great, man. You know? You're like, are you on drugs? Yes.
This is a good illustration of why you're back so fast. I just think you're very funny. I think you're very funny and fantastic. I really enjoyed talking to you. And so Leanna, thanks for coming back and for being on this show again. Let's tell people what this is. I probably already told them in the intro, but maybe not.
Yeah,
probably. We talked very recently on this podcast, and right at the end, you said this little thing. You said we need to do some tiny tactical tips, and I was like, yes, let's do that, because you and I talked about being funny in a brand, and I sort of framed it as being not boring in a brand in part too, because I think there's some broader application than just being funny. But and I think you think that too. But you are uniquely funny, and then we talked sort of conceptually a lot about some of those things and got into a little about things people should do about that, like join an improv class or join your cohorts or get your material. Those kinds of things can all help you. But that leaves this big question, which is how do you actually do it? Which is what everybody actually wants to know. Like, how do you actually do it? And so you had your little idea of TTT, Tiny Tactical Tips. So we could actually take people into really how you take this from conceptual into specifics. Did I get that right? Is that what we're going to talk about now?
Absolutely correct. And I think it's so funny that I did that on the first podcast that we recorded, because this tends to be how I approach it. I'm like, hey, can we talk about like the big conceptual side and the psychological stuff and the emotional stuff first? And everyone's like, no, can you just please tell me what to write? And it takes me weeks to get there in my brain. I'm
glad you wanted to do that. I am a very much an idea person, and sometimes actually struggle to get down to the details of things because like so much of the way that I try to approach a lot of problem solving is with this, like, let me just get my head around like the strategy and the belief first and what I'm actually trying to accomplish. And only once, for me personally, when my feet feel firmly established on that, then I'm like, okay, now I can actually go and figure out how to do it. So the point is you should go watch or listen to our last conversation if you are currently watching or listening to this one, and then you should watch or listen to this one.
So I'm like, I don't know what we talked about.
I know. I did have to go back to remember, like, okay, what are we going to do today? We're going to do something tactical. I remember that, but inexplicably, I couldn't remember tiny tactical tips.
I don't know if we talked about deciding why you want to be funny or not boring. For me, it's obvious. But like, just in case I didn't mention that last time, it's important to figure out what is the point of using humor if you're going to use humor, because there are so many strategic ways to deploy it and to build your brand voice. And it all comes down to, how do we want to make people feel, right? How do we want to be remembered? How do we want to build a relationship? If we mess up, can we use humor to, sort of smooth that over? And there's a lot of different ways to do it. And so I think I probably said this last time, because I've said this a million times, but often when I talk to brands about adding humor, they're like, it's an on or off switch, right? Is that ringing a bell?
Totally. Yeah. Well, I don't know if we said it like that, but I'm tracking what you're saying, and I think it's a helpful reminder.
Yeah, they're like, okay, I'm either super corporate and formal, or I'm Cards Against Humanity. And it's like, no, there's a huge spectrum in here, right? So you can just amp it up a little bit, get a little friendlier, warmer. Then you start to get absurd and weird. But most brands live in this very safe realm of sort of wholesome, goofy, non-harmful humor. This is where like puns live, dad jokes, cute animals, cute babies, people falling down but not getting hurt. That's like the safe zone to play in. And another safe zone is self-deprecation, which is why you see lots of, especially like younger Gen Z skewing brands doing self-deprecation, because it's very funny to make fun of yourself and no one gets hurt except you, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Do you think? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a bunch of stuff to consider. What were you going to ask?
Well, do you think more brands should push that line?
Yes, because it would make my work more fun. Selfishly. I really love it when brands come to me and then I work for them and then they're like, we love it, but can you go harder? It's very rare, because usually I'm like, I went hard, pull me back.
It is a good reminder though, that if you, there's a, I'll tell you a brand that I think of that is not funny, but that I think I've seen embrace more of their identity in a way that would be off-putting to some people, maybe perhaps even to you. I don't know. But that brand is Born Primitive. And Born Primitive is a military-founded brand and leans, I think, what you would say is broadly conservative on a lot of issues, so far as I can tell. What's that?
What I would say is broadly conservative.
Yeah, I don't know. But sorry, I don't mean what you would say specifically, but what I think many people would say is broadly conservative.
Got it.
Yeah. And what I have watched happen is that for a little while as they were growing, they backed off on some of those things and tried to be a more everyday, like, athletic apparel brand. And then what they decided over time was, no, this is actually who we are. We're going to press into this identity for better or for worse in terms of the identity itself. But it clearly resonated more deeply and it clearly pissed some people off. And I think, like, that is in some ways, I mean, I think humor doesn't always work that way. You don't always have to piss people off, but like it sort of took a risk of frustrating people, and it actually reinforced their identity and their depth with others. And I think there's a way to do that in a way that is really effective.
You're also describing a bell curve that I see in a lot of brands, especially in software, where in order to stand out in the market, when you launch, you have a huge personality, or you're just the founder, and so you can do whatever you want because no one's paying attention. As you grow, you have more stakeholders and they sort of flatten you. Like, they don't want, maybe it's not a bell curve, maybe it's the opposite of a bell curve. I don't know what math is, but it's a trend where as you get bigger, you have a lot of stakeholders that say it's not safe to be funny.
Right.
Let's calm it down. And then when you reach a certain market share, brand is the only thing that matters anymore, and you have to go hard again.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to go down this road farther, but let's resist the temptation. So let's do tactical. That's really the point of this episode, which is like, let's talk about how to actually do these things, no matter where you are going to be on that curve. Okay, Leanna, here's my question for you to start things off. How should brands be funny tactically? What do they do to actually do it besides take improv and take your classes, which they should do? They should take your classes, but
they should go through their copy, go through the customer journey, and look for places where people are feeling anxious or potentially excited. Or if they read their copy out loud at any point in the funnel, does it sound like something is missing? Because all of those are opportunities for a little bit of humor. So that's the first step. So go your own journey.
Okay, audit your own journey, and then is there like something people should be like? So you said like reduce anxiety or something like that. Like, how do I find the places where people are going to be anxious, or are there places where everybody is always anxious and like these are these spots in the funnel that you should just go look at for that?
Yes. Okay. So you should know like how your customer is feeling throughout the journey. You should do like an emotion mapping exercise. I actually smushed that together with a physiological arousal exercise in my course, which doesn't make any sense to anyone but me. But it's like, if people are really excited, their skin prickles, they start to sweat, their heart starts pounding, like you can turn that into excitement or anxiety. So you have a choice, right? Anyway, none of this is relevant.
Are there places typically where that happens? Like, is that at the ad level? Is that in the cart? Is that like at an email? Like, where is that?
I would say it used to be at the ad level, but now we see so many ads that it's probably more like a dull, like, oh, this seems interesting. And they click through or they laugh, right? But it's usually right when you're asking them to buy, or you're asking them to take some sort of meaningful conversion, add to cart maybe. And you have the choice whether to get out of the way and like reduce that anxiety in a non-funny way, or you have the choice to turn off the pressure valve a little bit and make them laugh. So it's like, it's up to you, because sometimes the laugh can be distracting, and you want them to stay anxious because you want them to take action, and you don't want the laugh to be the action, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's actually was my initial concern with doing it, is that like, if I'm just thinking about like at the moment of press the button. Yeah. It's like, MailChimp always had a really good version of this back in the day where it was like, it was like like when you were going to hit send, like the
Yep.
last step is like the monkey with the finger,
Little
and it's like
monkey
sweating.
finger. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like shaking nervously and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like a really good indication. It was like taking you towards the action of pressing send, but it was like a little moment of humor to go like, okay, you know.
That's such a
Yeah.
good example. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that because
Yeah.
they're right there with you, and all good copy meets the reader where they are, right? So
Yeah.
all good humor should meet the reader in that moment.
Nearly every one of my clients has installed their Meta Ads Pixel data set with Billy, and I am now sending more and more people outside of my client base to Billy, and that's for a very simple reason. I had somebody ask me about this today. Why should I use Billy? And I said, well, because I have tested Billy repeatedly over and over to make sure that my clients are getting the best data from their Shopify store into their Meta Ads account, because Meta, of course, is using all that data to power its machine learning to deliver your ads to the right people at the right time. And so you want to give Meta the best possible data from your store. Billy is the best third-party pixel of which I am aware, and that's for a bunch of reasons. One, I have tested it, and the event match quality from Billy's pixel has beaten everything else that I have tested against it, including other third-party tools. I've also tested it in head-to-head A/B tests, same campaign setup, same ad set setup, same ads. Billy's, the ROAS in the Billy campaigns is better than the other ones pretty much every time I've tested it. And I've replicated the tests multiple times. That's true if I'm comparing Billy to other third-party tools, or especially to the native Meta Shopify installation. You should go do it. It's only $1 for your first month, and it's incredibly easy to get started. It's like a couple clicks, and you will have your pixel installed. It is really, really that smooth. Go get Billy right now by going to billy.ai, bily.ai. It is affordable. It is the most affordable third-party pixel tool that I'm aware for 100% server-side tracking for your ads. It's what I use. You should use it too. bily.ai. That's good. And it also it came straight from who that brand is. Like the silliness of MailChimp. Like that idea is like a very silly brand, you know.
I think they still do it. I think it's still there.
Probably. No, I have no idea. I mean, since they broke up with Shopify all those years ago, like I haven't used MailChimp in forever. But okay, so can we go back? The goal of making somebody laugh in that moment is to make them purchase. But like, what's the in-between step there? Like, how does laughing help make them purchase? It reduces anxiety.
It boosts information recall. So if they wander away from your brand, they're more likely to remember you if you made them laugh.
Yeah, like for example, the fact that I haven't used MailChimp in all those years and I still remember the GIF.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Right? Yeah. I bet you can't think of a moment like that from any other email service provider.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely can't with ActiveCampaign.
Yeah.
They're just like, we're charging you more. Like, This would have worked better with a fun animation. Gusto does this really well too, though. Similar style. They send their regular transactional emails, but each has a different GIF at the top. And it's like, hey, you're getting paid right now. And it's just a cartoon of a person's feet, and there's a little cat wandering around the feet. And it's like, oh, you made this so cute in this totally banal touch point, which is a big passion of mine, like bringing humor into the moments where people don't expect it. Anyway, we're getting philosophical again.
No, we're not, because that's actually another really good tactical thing you could do. Like, just go look for the boring interactions in your business.
Go look at everything that you turned on by default in Shopify and Klaviyo.
Yeah.
Sorry, interrupted you.
No, don't be sorry. That's exactly right. I mean, it's interesting because people always used to say this about transactional emails in particular, which is that like they have the highest open rate of anything you'll send anybody, right? So it's like, and you can't, it's like illegal to use them to sell. So it was always just like, how do you turn this into something? I mean, you can like use a little bit of them to sell, but like essentially it's not even really what they're for. And all people think about is how do I use it to sell? But that's a really good idea. It's just like, how do I make this? We talked last time about the CD baby, transactional email, but just like finding ways to take a thing that everybody is going to see and open and turn it into a little bit of magic. Like that's a pretty low amount of effort, relatively speaking, for a high amount of impact, just because everybody opens it.
Yeah. And they've never been more excited than like right after they buy, right? So there's a space in between buying and getting the product where normally you get the default order confirmation email and you might get your order has shipped. And and I can't remember if we said this last time, but it's like the brand stops caring about you because all of this is already built out in Shopify. So if you can make them feel special, amp them up, educate them about the product, let them know, how to get the most out of it. I wrote some post-purchase emails for a coffee brand that were like, here's how to brew your beans at the perfect temperature so you don't destroy the coffee oils. And they were written, really fun and funny. And there was a gif of somebody walking away from a gas station blowing up. Like, you don't want to do this to your coffee beans. Use the right temperature water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a huge opportunity that barely any brands are taking.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then how do we do it?
How do we do it?
So you go look for the moment. Now, how do I actually go make it funny? Tactical, tiny tactical tip. Leanna, 1, go.
Choose a path, edit in the funny, write it straight and edit in the funny, or do some ideation, whatever you want to call it, exercises. Those are your 2 paths. I think if you're starting from right now, you can edit in the funny. And let me see.
So what do you mean? You mean by that? Don't change the basic concept of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So in the example you just gave, it would be like the post-purchase coffee email. You probably already have a post-purchase email if you're that coffee brand. And so one thing to do would just be like essentially to pepper in jokes so you don't change the concept. You're just like messing with the execution a little bit. But then another way to do it right would be to like scrap the whole email, start from scratch and say, what if we reimagine this?
Right. And then there's a tactical tip, tactic number 1, that is probably my all-time favorite, which is a fun and funky combination of the 2, which is add a frame or filter. So like it's an order confirmation email, but what if we made it ocean themed or Matrix themed, or we decided to use a bunch of GIFs from the cartoon Arthur? Like, putting those creative limitations around the piece makes it so much easier to make a cohesive, funny thing. It's much easier to say like, how do I make a Matrix joke than how do I make a joke?
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So all you're saying is essentially like, this is like a classic creative thing, which is that one of the ways that you do more creative things is that you essentially limit the scope of your options, right? Like, because okay. So in that case, like let's take the coffee brand. I don't know who you're talking about, but just because it's an easy thing, are you selling coffee on the internet? So now you would think about, okay, I'm going to send this coffee post-purchase email, and the theme of this email is going to be
birds.
Okay, great. And so birds, and does it matter if birds is related to coffee?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It's obviously like, if you're doing sort of a brainstorm exercise and you're coming up with things that are related to your brand, great, choose one of those because the cognitive leap isn't so far. But you could use birds. I used birds in one of those emails already. That's why it comes to mind. It was like, hey, a little bird told us you're out of coffee, because you bought it a month ago. You should get more. And also, why are you telling birds your business?
Yeah, right.
Why does that bird know? Yeah. So that is another trick you can use. If this is happening, then what else is happening? That's an improv thing. So if a bird knows, if a little birdie told me that you're out of coffee, why? What else does that bird know? Is there a syndicate of birds passing information? Have birds been government drones this whole time? Like, you can take it as far as you want, and that's how you build that little world.
That's so good. I mean, this feels like a reinforcement of your take an improv class thing. Because what I feel like you just did is, and this is going to be like the most basic improv thing, and it's going to sound like I'm an improv poser for saying it because I am, but it just sounds like you yes-anded yourself into the future, right? You're just like, okay, the moment that you say birds are in this world of this email, you just start playing out the absurdity of the scenario, and then you follow that as far as it'll go.
Yeah, exactly. If this is true, what else is true? We also call this heightening. And you've seen this in improv scenes where like something happens and something crazier happens and something really crazy happens, and you can always tell when there's not enough distance between those things. So you get to pick your beats, right? This is one way to come up with a frame or filter. You can also just do pop culture references, or like movies. If there's a show that your audience really likes, use a GIF from that show. And you can work backwards from a GIF that you like. So maybe it's, I don't know, Cher in Clueless, like clapping. I don't even know if that's a GIF. I'm just making her up.
Yeah.
But you could write the whole email as Cher. That gives you a frame or a filter for your message that makes it easier to write.
And if you're writing an email for millennial women, I'll say for a 38-year-old woman named Britt, who is my wife, that would play really well. Right? Because like that joke would just be very funny to her because she thinks Clueless is very funny. And so anyway, the point being, like, if that's a major part of your audience, they're going to love that reference and love that joke. And it's, Yeah, that makes sense.
And
That's
we talked
really
about
good.
universal humor, and there's a lot of GIFs and shows that are well known enough that they fall into that category. So like The Office, Parks and Rec, like anytime you use a GIF, also it should be understandable even if you don't get the reference.
I get asked countless questions about how to implement the media buying practices that I talk about all the time. People bring me specific questions. My cost caps won't spend. My cost caps are spending too much. Should I use TROAS? How do I test creative, etc.? And the place to go get those questions answered is not actually by DMing me. It's by going to Admission, because Admission is a combination of three things all at once. Admission is CTC's learning platform and community where there are courses pre-structured, including this year, like recent editions, Meta Ads campaign structure in 2024, a whole course on how to determine the number of ads you need to build, how to set monthly revenue targets, Google best practices 2024. There's a bunch of recent stuff, and there's always more of it coming into Admission to keep you up to date on the best and latest learning from CTC and Taylor Holiday and all of the stuff that they are getting across their ecosystem there. So those courses come nicely presented and packaged so that you can learn in clear ways, but that's not the whole value of Admission. From there, there's also a community of other people like you who are in Admission, seeking to grow their businesses with great financial principles, great advertising principles. They're there for you as well. And then there's coaching. And this is the most underrated value, I think, of Admission, is that you get access to CTC's team of media buyers to audit your actual account setup. So all those specific questions you would have for someone like me, honestly, probably better answered by CTC's media buyers who are extremely experienced. The ongoing price for that is an additional $150 an hour, which is really, really affordable for the level of consulting help that you are going to get. But actually, if you sign up for Admission through my link in the show notes of this episode that you're watching right now, if you sign up through my link, you get the first of those calls for free. And if you pre-book a year of Admission, you get 4 calls for free. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you want to learn how to implement this stuff in your business that I'm talking about all the time, go join Admission. There is no program nearly as good as that that I'm aware of. Go to Admission, jump in today. I just want to keep doing tiny tactical tips for as long as we can.
Tiny tactical tips. Okay, frame of filter is one of my favorite ones.
Great.
If we're talking about editing in the funny, I have a book recommendation. It's called Because Internet by Gretchen McCulloch, and it's about internet linguistics and how language changes and how to avoid sounding like a total poser when you say like, wow, these chips have Riz, because no, they don't.
That actually could be its own funny thing, though, to just like do a lot of those references all wrong. Yeah.
1,000%. It's the millennial cringe thing to do. Once we start saying it, it's dead for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right?
Get them. Yeah.
Yeah. One fun thing that I like to do that's sort of riding that line between copy and comedy is looking at the linguistics of the copy itself. So you write it straight, and then you come back to the copy and you say, are there any verbs or adjectives that could be working harder and more specific? And within that, after I've swapped out some stuff that punches a little harder, can I use any linguistic tricks? So alliteration is a big one. Alliteration actually is composed of consonants and assonants, repetition of consonant sounds and repetition of vowel sounds. That's more memorable, right? I wrote...
like tiny tactical tips?
Tiny tactical tips is one. Yes, exactly. Yeah. The longer that piece is that you repeat, the stickier it is, probably, right? So like taco tactics would be a repetition of that same TAC sound.
Yeah.
But there are combinations of words in the English language that are more rare than others. And when we hear them, they sound funny because we never hear them. And that's called linguistic entropy. So if you can bring in some linguistic entropy, that's a way to be funny without making a joke. And I will give you an example. I came across an agency recently, and the agency name is Dingus and Zazzy. And like, Dingus is funny.
Yeah.
It just is the combination of unusual sounds, and Zazzy is funny because we never hear that together. It's hilarious, right?
Yeah. And it's super memorable. Like if you're an agency and you want to be remembered, one way to build your agency name would be to be like growly.io or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that's just like fit into the way that everybody talks about their thing, or right. But another way to do it right would be to just like look at what everybody's doing and go like, okay, how do we just not sound like that at all? Right.
Right.
And like, and you're saying there's a layer of that actually comes down to like the formation of letters, like in terms of the combination of letters.
Yes. If you've ever watched Rick and Morty, they do this all the time, right? Let's discover how a plumbus is made. First, the Smergendorf is blorped into the kloop.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
it's like kind of German, but not really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. So you don't have to make up words, but you can use words with more unusual combinations of sounds. And also, there are some consonants that are just funnier than others. Like a K, hard K or hard C sound is very funny. Cookie, pickle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. Gosh. This is a detour that is probably should be edited out. I was reading somebody doing a long joke about Busy Town, Richard Scarry's Busy Town, the kids' books that you may or may not remember. Anyway, in Busy Town, they drive pickles for cars.
Yes.
And the writer was writing a whole scenario about how Busy Town acquired a Major League Baseball team and brought that team from Tampa Bay to Busy Town. Anyway, and it's this whole ridiculous, silly thing. But one of the jokes he made a couple times was drawing direct reference to the pickle cars. And now part of it is the silliness of a pickle car, but I was trying to figure out why I thought that was funny. And I think you are right that part of it is because the word pickle is funny.
And then you have car, which is another hard K sound.
That's so interesting. I've never noticed that in quite those ways. Yeah.
There is a great clip on John Oliver where he ends up with the punchline. He's a perfect setup and he ends up with the punchline, Benedict Cumberbatch's cucumber cummerbund. And it's like, oh, just nailed it.
Yeah. That joke is just like right there in your face. You don't even need the setup, but of course the setup is going to draw it out more. And it's just you can feel like it's just sort of like, yeah, there's a way of putting language right in your face that is sometimes very annoying in writing, I think, where somebody is just sort of like, you can just imagine them writing a sentence and then being like, look at how great I am at writing, and that, in fact, sort of draws attention away from the words when that happens because it just is like so flowery, But in that case, it actually puts all the attention on the words themselves. You like sit and think about it and go like, that's really funny.
And you bring up a good point, which is that you can take this too far. You can distract from the message. And that's where editing comes in. And sometimes you have to be like, I love this joke, but there are too many jokes in this paragraph. I'm thinking mostly of like landing and product pages. Like I need to cut something and we have to pick only our favorites to keep the focus on actually buying.
Right. Because we've actually lost the idea somewhere at some point.
Right. Like you don't want to get so into the humor of it that someone's like, haha, that was funny. Okay, bye. Like, no, you still need to pay for it.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. You also used a phrase earlier that I want to go to. So you said verbs and adjectives. You referenced verbs and adjectives that were not doing enough work for you.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of a sentence that includes a verb and or adjective that is not doing enough work and how you might change it? And if I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you can think of one,
no, it's awesome. Fine. There are plenty, right? So like get, have, enjoy, taste, like they're fine. And there is a benefit to using conversational language and short words that we use in talking to each other. But like maybe get is nab or snag or seize, like it's choosing words with more opinions. And then instead of an adjective, maybe try putting in a comparison, which might set you up for a joke. And I'm shamelessly segueing into my next tactical tip, which was add more comparisons, because those are opportunities to be funny. But for example, instead of get the softest t-shirt you've ever worn, snag a t-shirt softer than a fuzzy bunny.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, okay, we have a column here for t-shirt and we have a column here for fuzzy bunny. What do they have in common? Eco-friendly, super soft. One survives the washing machine, one does not. So like, there's your joke,
Oh man, I was thinking actually a step past your point to apply it to a specific thing, and then I came back around and listened to the actual joke, and I thought it was really funny. The point that I was getting to though is I was actually thinking about, I was interacting with one of my very favorite creative people in e-commerce, which is Jess Bachman from Fireteam. Jess is a really, really funny guy and just really, just super creative. I probably mentioned this last time, but I sort of put you and Jess in the same bucket in my mind of people who are extremely creative and talented in this way, from whom there's a lot to learn, and then also who you should just hire to do stuff for you.
I love this.
Because I'm just not going to be as funny as you. So Jess was working on an ad that started with a comparison to Gollum, to somebody's relationship to the product being like, or not to the product, but to something else, to Gollum and his precious.
No, I was telling you that. That was me.
No, well, maybe, but actually this wasn't a Jess ad as well.
Oh, really? Okay, we're all the same.
And so
I just wrote an email like that.
And so, what I actually was thinking though is that there was an opportunity at the ad level to do that same joke 5 different ways, and to think of, like Gollum and his precious, you could think of, and I'm not clever enough to do this on the spot, but like, I was actually thinking somebody as creative and interesting of a thinker as Jess would be able to, or as you, or there's plenty of people listening to this, watching this, who would do this as well, who would go like, okay, like Gollum with his precious, what else is like that relationship? And then one thing I think you could do with this is take this to the hook level of an ad, basically. So you're referencing this with an email, but because a lot of people who are listening to, watching me, like, are thinking about ads, there's probably a way to use something like that, which actually does convey a point. The point being, this thing is very important to me. And in making that point, you could then come up with a better other analogies like that, and maybe think about like, okay, would one of these play differently or better than the other one? And at the ad level, you could actually take the same concept of an ad and rehook it with a bunch of different like jokes or ideas like that, and get really far. And before you respond to that, here's that my 4-year-old would like to be on this podcast really fast, and he's saying hello. So LaRue, can you wave and say hi to Miss Leanna?
Hi, Miss Leanna.
And can you say hi to all the people watching or listening?
Hi.
Okay. We are going to keep talking now. I love you so much. And
I brought a maple bar.
You brought a maple bar for me? Yeah. Incredible news, guys.
Should I go get it?
So
after a little while.
Here, should I go get it and put it on a towel for you?
Yeah, can you put it in the kitchen for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll just leave it there. Thanks, buddy.
Okay.
Will you bring me one too?
Headphones, he can't hear you. No maple bar for you. Great news for me, though.
Never walk in here with treats for me. So rude.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I in my head came up with 2 hooks from the Lord
Okay, go. That's great.
So you mentioned headphones. I was already thinking headphones. Like, okay, buy these new headphones. Throw your old headphones into Mount Doom. Right. Okay. Full circle, ties it in a nice little bow for headphones that are more trustworthy and loyal than Samwise Gamgee. Like, we are doing the thing where we're applying a filter. Right. We're applying Lord of the Rings. To this.
Yeah.
And you can just map characters and scenarios onto your product and your consumer.
Yeah. I mean, I was also thinking you could just like, in this case, especially because like I think the goal of humor in a lot of these things is to partly just to capture more attention from somebody, just to get somebody to stop doing the thing of just like going through blah, 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 email, your product's going to arrive at this time and this is how you use it. I've seen 4,000 emails like this, but it's just like, break the pattern. Just like find some way to get somebody to stop and notice you and have a moment, like you said, is more memorable. And so if you, anyway, you could play with this idea a lot of different ways. And I think I guess what I'm saying is an underrated way of hooking ads is to take an idea, which is something is very precious to someone, and then to restate it with like a comparison, and then to try that with 5 different comparisons, something like that. So,
especially if you know you're making a reference to something your audience already loves.
Totally.
Yeah. I think humor at the ad level can be so hit or miss because it absolutely gets attention. But if the call to action is obscured by the humor, then it's just another meme in the feed, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen some really hardworking ads that converted like crazy, humor concepts. But I've also seen ones that totally fell flat, especially static ads, because you're just like, oh, haha, bye.
Yeah. That is right. This is where, I think I was actually saying this to Jesse the other day too. One thing I think about sort of the media buying method that I talk about a lot is that because you have the ability to try a lot of different ideas and a lot of different like hooks and variations of copy and things like that, you sort of get freed to take more risks. And I think that's some of what we're talking about here. Like, because what will happen is if your ad works, then your then Meta will spend on it. If your ad doesn't work, Meta won't spend on it. So if your risk doesn't pay off, it's fine. Meta's just not going to spend on your ad if you are buying that way. And that's in some ways is like less risky than like a post-purchase email where you've now got a customer and you want to treat them in a certain way. And so it's maybe a good place for people to try some of these things, is just like take some bigger swings in those moments, resist any possible way of being boring, and take some of the things that you're talking about here, Leanna, and just go like, can we try some things that we wouldn't otherwise try at the level of hook? Because the whole goal of the hook is to get engagement and to capture attention.
Yeah. I think that's why you see so many viral ad formats going around, even with brands that like are not funny and don't plan to be funny, but they're like, we'll try this version of the video where we cut out everything but the like, you seen those?
Yeah. I haven't, but I immediately get it. Yeah. Okay. Comparisons. That was a tiny tactical tip.
That was a tiny tactical tip. What else? Another blend of good copy practice and comedy opportunity. I see this a lot, again, on product descriptions, but sometimes in ads where you have a series of things, and that series would be more visually better presented as a list of bullets, right? So don't make me work. Don't make me think. I don't want to read this whole series. Turn it into bullet points, and then make one of the bullet points a funny thing. Depending on how hard you want to go, the funny thing can be the last in the list of bullets, which is how it should be in a series. Like unfunny thing, funny thing. Or if you want it to be more subtle and you have a longer bullet list, you can hide it in the middle somewhere so that you're rewarding a reader who's reading through. They're still getting the information, but they're like, haha, oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Where do you think the place to do that is? Is that like on the website,
I do it on
in an
product
email?
pages a lot.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
PDPs. In the description, if we have a bullet point list. And you sometimes see like the humor ramping up throughout the bullets. Or if we go back to the t-shirt example, it's like, ring spun cotton, super soft, available in sizes extra, extra small to 5X, like for your smallest baby to your largest uncle. I don't know. That's not funny. But then like, it has been known to cause people to mug you. You'd have to cut this down, right? But the theme is like, people will rob you for your shirt, right? So it gets absurd as we go through the list of bullet points.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I love that. Okay, that's great. Are there do you think that requires sort of being? It's almost like a heightening thing, is what it sounds like you're doing. Like it's like you take this list of things and then you're going like, okay, well. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It can be, or it can be a lateral presentation of items. Like I think the t-shirt example I gave before was super soft, like a fuzzy bunny, two things they have in common, but only one of them can survive the washing machine. Like that's sort of a lateral presentation of important items. I'm not making sense. I know that I'm not explaining this well.
Well, I think I get the idea completely, right? Which is just like, you've got the list going, add something funny into the list. It's almost like that same principle, which is just like, just resist making the thing that everybody has seen boring. People know what sizes you have. People know what, like, like you add something else in there, and it's just like they need information, right? A PDP has to convey certain amounts of information that are important for people to understand why they can safely get out their wallet and buy your product. But at some point in there, do something that breaks it up.
And a way to come up with those ideas is, how can we make them smell this, feel this, taste this? Because that leads you toward more specific images.
Okay. Can we talk about smell and taste for a minute?
Sure.
This feels like a specific challenge of e-commerce, and if you don't have anything to say about this, it's okay. But I currently have a smell client and I have a taste client, and I've been thinking about this a lot, which is like, how do we do a better job? Like, I mean, let's tactically. How do I use language to convey something that is fundamentally non-conveyable on the internet? Like, I can create a great image for something that is. I know what to do with apparel to make somebody like imagine what it would look like on them. There's some visual things you can do there, etc. But like, I have to get somebody to figure out how to taste fruit. Like, how do I do that?
How do perfume brands do it?
Right.
You paint this picture, and the picture is actually more about the brand than it is about the end result. But like, okay, can you give me an example of the taste one? Like, what's the product?
Okay. Yeah, sure. It's a farm that sells exotic fruit. And so, yeah, I know. I thought, yeah, you're the exact right person for this. But they sell, let's say, passion fruit. They grow passion fruit. And to hear them tell it, and I believe them, they grow their passion fruit in the best region in the world to grow passion fruit. And so during the peak of passion fruit season, they sincerely believe, and I believe this, I actually haven't tasted it yet myself, but I'm going to buy some because they've told me this, that it is the best passion fruit in the world. It is literally, like, because of the growing conditions and the seasons and all those things, it is exactly the best passion fruit in the world. It happens to be where their farm is.
Yeah.
How do I convey that to somebody tactically? Because I have to use words now to say, because here's what Andrew Ferris would do in this situation. What I would do is say, I would show visuals. First of all, I understand you should make sure it looks delicious. That's classic food advertising. How do I go to another step though and use words besides, this is actually the best passion fruit in the world? That's what I want to say. What do I do?
I mean, you have so many angles, right? You have texture, you have flavor, you can compare to things that they've had before. You can compare to a more like nebulous or imaginative experience, like, you know, taking one bite of this passion fruit will transport you to wherever.
Sure.
But like texture words like buttery, chewy, I don't know, describing the mouthfeel. Like, if they're growing the best passion fruit in the world, they probably have this information, right? And you can go through and scrape this from your reviews. The way that people describe your product is always going to be better than the way you describe it. Oh, there was something else I was going to say. Best passion fruit in the world. Like, you've had passion fruit, but you haven't had this passion fruit. So you've really only had like mildly interested fruit, like casual hobby
It's
fruit.
right there in the name. You know, come on.
Right
how did I not think of that? I'm an idiot. Gosh. Yeah. Or you could even go the other, like, maybe this is stupid, but like, you might as well call other passion fruit passion vegetable. Is that bad?
I kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's how much better this is.
Or passion fails. Yeah. I don't know. That's
passion what?
Passion
fail.
Passion
Yeah.
failures.
Yeah. Okay.
Better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But okay, that's so helpful though, because actually this is another thing where, like, I think down to the ad level, what I'm trying to do is, I actually believe we can convey all of those things really, really well. Post click, like, I think we can show with imagery and video and stuff like that. But like, there's just this, I just know there's a still image out there of a picture of great, delicious looking passion fruit. And certainly there's some subset of people who know exactly what good passion fruit looks like, you know? And then I want copy on the image to do some work to make somebody stop on this and go like, I have to eat that. And so the passion vegetable thing may not be that funny really, but it is probably a better way of saying it than this is the best passion fruit in the world. Although me being me, I would also make one of the ads say this is the best passion fruit in the world.
So if it's the best passion fruit in the world, you're going to have this crazy experience when you eat it. If you're going to have this crazy experience when you eat it, where are you going to eat it? Are you going to eat it in public? Are you going to care what you look like while you eat it? Because my brain immediately went to an image of a beautiful woman biting into a passion fruit with just juice everywhere, like somewhere she absolutely shouldn't be, like in a board meeting, you know, or like on the elevator, and people are like, and the tag is, but like, she just can't contain herself. So good, you won't be able to stop yourself or something like that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a lot better of an idea than I thought of. Yeah, okay. All right, let's keep going. Tactical. Okay, what other things should people do that are tactical ways of writing funnier things?
Ways to write in funnier. A really easy one is to capitalize words or italicize words, or however you like to emphasize them, for inflection. So the way that I just went inflection, you know, you might have like italicized that. It's got a little zing on it when I say it out loud, but we don't get that in writing. So to add more of a cadence, a spoken cadence to your writing, go through and emphasize a word here or there. And you could do it as if you were yelling. There's a detergent brand that used to say, like, life is so difficult day to day. You've got the dishes, the laundry. Oh my God, the laundry. And they're like yelling laundry in all caps. Notably, it's only that one word. Yeah.
That's really effective.
It's really effective, and you hear it. And in that same vein, you can work in onomatopoeia words. So like, instead of saying, the door slams behind you as you race home to dig your face into this passion fruit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like crash. That's all the knickknacks falling off your shelf, because actually that lights up a different area of the brain when you describe a noise. Purple does this in their order confirmation email, bonus points for them. They actually just describe the noise inside asterisks. They say, awesome explosion noise. Your order is confirmed. And you're like, cool, I can do whatever. I can describe whatever noise I want. Like 10,000 angels playing tiny trumpet fanfares.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you hear that. Like it's whatever the reader wants it to be. And that's such a fun thing to do.
Yeah. That's really good. Okay. I love that. So points of emphasis. Do you think there's a general principle here that people ought to be reading their copy out loud so they know what it sounds like?
Oh, 1,000%. Another tip that I use myself is like read it out loud as if I'm Morgan Freeman. Like it doesn't matter how good your Morgan Freeman impression is, you're automatically going to slow down and sort of give it that gravitas.
Yeah.
It's a passion fruit, but it's unlike any other fruit you've ever had. It's me, Morgan Freeman. I love passion fruit. See, it's so bad. It's not a good Morgan Freeman impression, but it works. I don't know why you like that.
You know what I like is that this podcast episode is a good illustration of like the principle here, which is just like, I do podcast after podcast about meta media buying tactics and the financial things for your growth. And no one's ever done a Morgan Freeman impression, Leanna. And that's why I'm laughing.
First time for everything.
So look, whether or not it was a good Morgan Freeman impression, it's the best one that's ever been on this show.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Participation trophy is mine.
No, you win. You're number one. And I think if I went and tried to do mine, it would be worse. So
it's really bad. It takes me a while to get into it. But you can also read it as Batman, you know, and I will spare you from my Batman impression. But, I used to have a stand-up bit that was like things Batman would never say in Batman's voice, which is pretty fun. We're out of tampons. You know. Okay, that's it.
That's a better Batman than Morgan Freeman, I think.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good joke. Did people, I feel like people would laugh at that joke. That's a better joke than a lot of stand-up jokes.
I never really bombed when I did stand-up. I was very lucky to never.
Why don't you do more? Do you do more now? Do you stop?
No, it's like so competitive in Austin that it took all the fun out of it for me. The scene in New Orleans is really small and friendly, and the scene here is like large and mean. I don't know. I just don't. Maybe
it's because I went to a stupid place. The only time I have been to Austin, really, I went to dinner alone one night, and it happened to be a like open mic night, and it was so bad.
Where was it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was on. I'm not going to even do Austin. I don't know Austin at all. And it was so bad. And so I hear you say that. I was like, well, you would have been better than those people. That's for sure.
But it's one of the showcases that I did 3 weeks in a row, I did 10 minutes until the showcase disappeared, because it was at this sake place that served dinner where unsuspecting people came in to just drink terrible sake and have mediocre dinner. And then they were subjected to comedy against their will. And they were trying to have conversations. Anyway, it was horrible. So I miss doing stand-up, but it's just
maybe this was like a food truck circle spot in
very possible.
Is 5th Street a thing?
Yes.
Dirty. What's dirty something?
Dirty 6th.
Oh, 6th. Yeah. I don't know if it was there. It was maybe on a. Anyway, I don't remember.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay. Okay. What else? What's next? Tiny tactical tips. Go.
Tiny tactical tips. Playing with the space as if it's not just like paper or, you know, it's not just a place to present images and text. What if it's a tiny stage? What if it's a weather prediction? Like, what if it's the meteorologist's screen or green screen? What does it mean to leave a lot of space? You've probably seen this in some text-based emails where it's like, hold on, I need a minute. Enter. All this blank space. Like, here we are.
Maybe with a period in each one, just so people know that. Yeah.
Right. Or not.
Yeah.
I just think it's so fun. You can play with font size and orientation and space to be like, this isn't just an email. This isn't just a product page. This isn't just an ad. This is something else that's happening. It's very much, you know, what if this weren't paper? One brand I saw did this and said, everything is on sale for the holidays. oh, sorry, for the Australians in the room. And then they flipped everything is on sale for the holidays upside down and pasted that upside down text in. And I was like, that's fucking hilarious.
That's so good.
It doesn't have to be crazy, right?
Yeah.
I also like tiny little text, because people are paying attention, reward them. So sometimes in my emails, I'll be like, I'll write the whole email, and then at the end I'll be like, you look hot today and your mom loves you, in like size 8 text. Or in our pet brand emails, I've done things at the bottom that say, oh, look, a tiny hamburger, and then put the hamburger emoji in there. Like, we're having fun, right?
Yeah, right.
It's a real hamburger now. Yeah.
That's so good. Okay. Gosh, that's great. We've got we're hitting towards the end of time. Okay. I'm good on time, but I want to make sure that if there's any other of these that we just like rapid fire them out. What other ones can people do?
Okay. Rapid fire. Have a fucking
doesn't have to be that rapid, but yeah.
Okay. Well, have a fucking opinion. Have an opinion. Take a side. Okay. Whether in copy and improv, it's always more interesting when you have an opinion on the product or the issue, and you make that clear. You have strong emotional feeling behind it. That leads to funny things.
Can you do that with things that are not actually controversial? Like what I mean is like the passion fruit example. Yeah. I'm trying to understand the principle. I really like like essentially like taking the opinion. This is literally the best passion fruit in the world, and everybody else is wrong. Is that what you mean? Like you sort of position it almost like you're arguing.
And it's like, here's why every other passion fruit in the world sucks. Yeah. They're dry, they're mealy, they're stringy, they're pulpy. They were grown under poor conditions, like in sandy soil that makes them shitty. And you're displaying your knowledge during all of this. And like, and then you get an opportunity for self-deprecation where it's like, wow, Rachel, seems like you really care about passion fruits. Yes, I am passionate about passion fruits. Yeah. You can poke fun at yourself. And people do this all the time. This is very much a branding move where it's like, I looked around for a version of this thing and it didn't exist, so I decided to make it. We've seen that founder story. Yeah. And it works. It's really cliche, but it really works.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay. Okay. Another good tip, use what you know. Go back to your customer research, go to your reviews, go to your survey responses, go to your customer support chats, and pull out sticky phrases. You probably do this to find hooks for ads or CTAs. Sure. Yeah. What else? Create a character.
Use what you know. I mean, how do you turn that into something funny? Use what you know.
Using what you know in improv makes it much easier to get to specifics in a scene. If I'm starting a scene and I decide to be an astrophysicist, I have to make everything up, and that's really, really hard.
I see what you're saying. So all you're saying is, right. Okay. So you're saying when you approach your brand and when you approach framing or any of these things, don't feel like you have to go be an astrophysicist or whatever.
Yes. Thank you for translating that for me. Cause I was like, it's an improv thing. And in this case, it's like, you probably have done a bunch of customer research or your customers very well. Don't think that you have to depart from what they're saying to you just to be original. Because it's probably going to work better if you don't.
That's really good. Is there another version of that that's the opposite, which is like to do astrophysicist, but then completely make everything up? Like just like in a way that just, I feel like this is like an improv thing I've seen, which is like somebody says they're an astrophysicist and then they just start making up words that sound sort of astrophysicist-y to somebody who's not an astrophysicist.
It's really hard to do, but that's very funny, right? When it's done well. I just saw a scene like this. It was a pretend panel show where somebody was playing the really smart astrophysicist, somebody was playing an astrologer, and somebody was playing like an alien in a skin suit. And each of them got a chance to answer. But all of these frames, you already know what they're going to say when they get to them. It's like, well, Mercury's in Gatorade, so yeah.
But Mercury's in Gatorade is a great use of that. That's really funny.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about the 5 senses of humor this time, and I'm not going to make you do a third podcast episode with me. I don't know if we touched on it last time, but this is another way to think about the sense of humor that your brand has. I mentioned that most brands go for that like wholesome, non-offensive, kind of funny style, and you know it when you see it. But there's also dark and morbid, right? There's lowbrow and crass, which is where poop and sex jokes live. There's highbrow and intellectual. Was it Moose Jaw? Moose Jaw, the the mountaineering brand, or was it another mountaineering brand? They posted something once that was like, had a dream that I combined the song Too Legit to Quit with Kant's categorical imperative. And it's like, okay, we get it. You're smart. And that's what highbrow jokes do. You have to like be in on some sort of cultural or intellectual knowledge.
Yeah, but the point of that is to call out to the people who get the joke and to leave the other people on the table, basically, right?
Exactly.
Just,
or there's people on the table who are like, yeah, I totally get that. I'm going to buy this because I want to be affiliated with smartness.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, that's interesting though. That joke is a decision that has a lot of things behind it. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and if you don't get it, you're not, actively harmed. You're just like, okay. But
do you get it?
Get it? You're like, good for me. I read Kant.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Nobody likes you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Congratulations, you've read Kant. You don't have any friends.
Go mountaineering alone.
Yeah. Right. My version of that is that I basically get the joke, but haven't actually read Kant, which probably says a lot of bad things about me, actually.
Hey, me too.
Yeah. It's like exactly like it's the actual very worst person on that, like, which is like, can reference the joke, but doesn't really understand it, like, but wants you to know that, yeah.
There's two of us in this club.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Any other last ones? There's you've got, okay, great. Yeah. I just want to make sure you don't leave any mega winners on the table here.
I'm hoping I'm not, but one of my favorites is create a character. And it doesn't have to be like a fully branded thing that you get designed and animated. It can just be like someone who doesn't actually work at the company. You make them up. And sometimes that gives people more leeway to be silly because it's not them, right? I have this thing behind me, which is Litmoose. You can't see him, but he's a stuffed moose. That's Litmus, email marketing companies. That's their moose, right? And so Litmoose sometimes sends emails. At our pet brand, we sometimes send emails from cats. I might have mentioned this last time, but an Australian financial services company asked me to write from the point of view of their new mascot, which is a goldfish wearing like a strap-on shark's fin. And we called him Fish Shark. And so I wrote a whole email in their new client welcome sequence as if he were flopping around on a keyboard, being like, "It me, Fish Shark, just here to tell you can save with blah, blah, blah. Oh no, hear noises, must get back in tank." There's so many different ways to like invent somebody. I've worked for an e-commerce store where their abandoned carts came and they told the story of Kyle, who is the intern, and Kyle is like really counting on you to check out, and if you don't, he's gonna cry. And the next email, Kyle is crying, and the next email, he's under his desk and we're calling his mom, and he's really upset because he worked really hard on this product, and like, can you please just check out? So, I've heard this before.
I actually haven't, but there's just a lot of, it's not a huge deal to us, but Kyle's really upset about, whatever, you sort of like almost like release the anxiety kind of thing, right? It's like by like pinning that on Kyle, you sort of ask for the sale without seeming desperate and throwing discounts at people.
And you're like, what's going to happen next? I better open this next email to see what Kyle is up to. So it's a good way to get people to open. They still get replies to that sequence being like, this made me laugh, great job. It's been years.
I'm sure. I mean, it comes back to the way I framed our first episode, which is just like it's just about not being boring partly, and just doing things that are just going to be interesting and fun. And look, I mean, one of my things when I hear this stuff is like, I bet we could make brands money by doing it, and it will work and it'll be effective. But it also just sounds like it would make my life more fun and interesting to work on things. And that is like a real thing. Like, a lot of the stuff we're doing here is not going to solve world hunger, and you'll make plenty of money if you execute the brand well and think financially effectively and all those things. There is something to be said about the idea that like, I don't know. There's probably some roundabout way to make a financial argument for this beyond the conversion rate. Like, oh, it'll help your retention because people will like your brand. They'll be proud of it, or something like that. Maybe. But also, it just sounds fun. It just sounds fun to work on. And like, it's a thing that people watching and listening to this are pouring their lives into these brands. And like, it's just fun. Just do something that's fun and interesting.
We talked last time, this very lofty ideal of like bringing more joy into the world, right? Because it's rough out there and we're all going to die, and like we might as well be enjoying it. But on a day-to-day level, doing this kind of work can make your culture more fun.
Sure.
You know, within the brand. Like if you have inside jokes and a culture of like, try it, see what happens, you know, with humor, it's just more fun to work there. So people will stick around. Yeah.
Okay. People, what they should do is hire you for things. They should hire you to write, to write stuff for you. As you can see, Leanna is way quicker to the jokes and way funnier than me, and certainly than you, dear watcher or listener. So, cause I mean, I'm pretty funny, but Leanna is a lot funnier than all of us. So anyway, have her do it and execute it for you by going to punchlinecopy.com. She is the founder of that. And as she would say, the head puncher. It's a great joke. Anyway, go hire her and then follow her on Twitter as well and keep enjoying her content there, and then DM her there and then hire her later. If you don't hire her right now, you could do that at Punchline Copy.
Yeah. That's
okay. I thought I had that right. Great. Yeah. All the links, of course, are in the show notes for those things. Leanna, thanks for coming back on such a short time period and for doing tiny tactical tips for how to do this. This was extremely fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I loved this.
All right. If you like this episode, the number one thing you can do to say thanks for that is to share it with somebody who you think would get value from it as well. And of course, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. If you'd like to reach out to me, make sure to do that at podcast@ajfgrowth.com or at Andrew J. Ferris. The links to follow up with Leanna and all of my sponsors, including Billy and Admission, are in the show notes. Go check those out. Thanks so much for watching, for listening. I'll talk to you next time.